Welcome to Slowing Down to the Speed of Tawakkul podcast. Join us for some spiritual CPR, short conversations that bring hope where life looks hopeless, helping you move from self-reliance to reliance upon Allah and from your head back to your heart. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And what are we talking about today? The gift of thought.
Yes, this is our fourth one and a very important one, alhamdulillah. And I love that we're calling it a gift. Although sometimes it can unfold feeling a lot like not a gift, but a grievance, really. Alhamdulillah. I guess let's start with the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the angels to only be able to worship him, do what they're told, and the animals to only follow instinct. Yes, they have intelligence, but it's instinctual intelligence. But he created us to have the ability to choose. And that's the gift of thought that we're talking about, is that way in which we perceive and understand our experience is through the gift of thought.
Yes. So when I'm hearing you say that, it's often we don't see that as a gift, isn't it? We're not aware that how thought plays such an important role in how we are experiencing life and how we are experiencing life in general, how we perceive things. So what might you say, Sister Kathryn? Like, how do we accidentally use the gift of thought when we're not aware?
Well, first of all, I think that the first point is that all of our experience is understood through the gift of thought. Where we slip up is often thinking that our circumstance or a person has created the feeling that we're having around our experience, that there is this direct connection between what's happened and our experience. But that's only because it doesn't look like there was thought in between, but there has to be. Like, this is the first point, I think, is that to really recognize that it is through thought that we have this experience. You can't have experience without thought. I think that's the first point. The second point I think is really important is it's a gift from Allah. And just like Allah's given us the gift of sight, and we can choose to use that gift of sight to come closer to Allah by reflecting on his beautiful creation, by reading the Qur'an, all these sorts of things we can do with our eyes, with our sight, that bring us closer to Allah. Or we can use our gift of sight at looking at things or doing things which take us away from Allah, like looking at things that are haram, or reading things that are going to muddle our understanding of life, reading books about weird and wonderful things that conflict with our Islamic teachings. There's many different ways we can use that gift of eyesight to either bring us closer to Allah or steer us away from Allah. And the same thing is true for the use of the gift of thought. We can use the gift of thought in a way that brings us closer to Allah, and we can use it in a way that steers us away from Allah. And I think we can see that quite clearly, that when we consciously make the choice to go to the mosque on Friday for Friday prayer, we are using the gift of thought to make that intention and then follow through with actions. And if we choose to skip our prayer, for instance, we've still thought about that and listen to that thought and take an action from that. So I think that's very obvious.
Mhm.
What isn't obvious is how we accidentally use the gift of thought in ways that steer us away from Allah. And I think that's the area that we touch on in the slowing down to the speed of tawakkul.
Mhm. I think the first thing which I heard in what you were sharing, Mr. Catherine, is getting closer to Allah at times is something not many of us would even understand how important that is. Okay, though like, I'm a born Muslim, but I'm not sure if I even understood because we are chasing things. So hence we use our gift of thought towards things which is not important, um, which takes us away from Allah because we are not even aware that nothing happens without getting closer to Allah. Okay, the real goal is to get closer to Allah. So what we are
Yeah.
saying is, how can we use being aware of how are we using the gift of thought, which either takes us closer or away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mm.
That by itself is something to ponder upon, isn't it? Like, how am I already using, unconsciously using, innocently using? Then comes, how can I choose to use it? For example, like I can go to a Friday prayer because that's mandatory.
Mhm.
But I can go there because I want to get closer to Allah. That's the intention we are talking about. That just the action by itself doesn't get us closer to Allah. The intention and the action. There are unconscious intentions, there are conscious intentions. So when I go to the mosque in order to get closer to Allah, we experience there is a whole new experience there. There's so much closeness. Okay, you start to feel there's barakah at every step of the way of traveling, etc. So we are pointing to something very subtle which can be missed, which can
Mm.
be ignored, which we don't pay attention to because we are always using this gift, just that we are not even aware.
Constantly. Well, we're constantly thinking, even if we don't realize it. It's
Yes.
even when we think that our mind is empty, it's not. It's like we're still thinking. And I think some of the areas that are very challenging are where we have been conditioned to think a particular way about particular things. So, for instance, we can inherit secular type thinking, and that can be running there, and it doesn't look bad because, in fact, it could be leading to doing good things. But it's leading us to do good things in a way that isn't earning us reward from Allah because our intention is for the dunya, not the akhirah. So, for instance, I was brought up in a non-religious environment, in fact, an atheist environment, and the rhetoric I was brought up with was, you study, you go to university, you have a career, you make money, you buy a house. Somewhere along the line, you might get married and have children, but that was always like a side hustle rather rather than the main theme, right? Now that can become embedded in your mentality. It can even still pop up for me, even now, after being a Muslim 31 years and having really shifted my perspectives and understanding of things in massive ways. That underlying conditioning that I had as a child can pop up subtly, and suddenly something that I thought I was doing for the sake of Allah, I'm actually doing because of that conditioning. And I think the recent insight I had around my thinking around, do I do a master's and PhD in this work, or do I keep continuing to do this work? I think there is a layer in there of the conditioning that I grew up with, which is pushing me. You should go down that route of getting the degree, right? But that's not, when it's coming from that subconscious, it's not coming from is this the right thing to do right now to please Allah? Is this the direction Allah is asking me to go with this work that I'm doing? Is the work that I'm doing going to actually really need that? Or is that my something in my ego that is pulling me towards that, which is coming from conditioning? And so this is how we can, you might go, but the PhD is all about fitra and tawakkul and Allah's guidance and all these beautiful, wonderful Islamic things. But if I go into it because my conditioning led me there, then none of it is of benefit in the akira, in my scale anyway. And that's how we can innocently lead ourselves away or deceive ourselves into believing we're doing good, and perhaps discover on the day of judgment, where did all those deeds go? I thought I did all of that for the sake of Allah.
Mm. Subhanallah. This is such a subtle and very important thing to understand. Otherwise, we can be thinking we are doing the right thing, but we can be misled. That's why this is so important to understand. It's so subtle, yet it's so essential. If the goal, I'm hearing this again and again, like this is, if the goal is to get closer to Allah, which may not be the case, and unconsciously we may be chasing things which we think is important because of our upbringing. But again, coming back to seeing that what really matters. So I think what I'm hearing, Kathryn, is about becoming aware of how we are using the gift of thought. It either
Mm,
helps us get closer to Allah or away from Allah,
mm.
moment to moment basis.
Yes, moment to moment basis. This is not one big paintbrush that wipes across the whole thing. It's from one moment to the next, which is why one of my teachers has said, with our intentions, we need to check in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end to make sure that our intentions have stayed on track, because that is how we're using the gift of thought in the moment. But it also pours into how we respond to things. So, for instance, um, somebody may say something to us quite innocently, right? And they mean something very good. But because we've been through a difficult experience and there's something about what they said or how they said it or whatever has triggered an old memory of that, now we're actually thinking about it, not in the way it was intended, but in the way we've received it. And then we respond in an attacking way back at that person. Now they're confused, and we've now not responded in a way that's pleasing to Allah. We've responded in a way that feels justified in the moment because of the feelings that pop. We're not recognizing the fact that actually in that moment we're using the gift of thought in a way that is actually moving us away from Allah rather than towards Allah. And so we're not here to tell you how to fix that at this moment, because that will be future sessions. We just want to help you understand why it's important that we talk about the gift of thought and how it can lead us to or away from Allah, the way we use it. So we often use language like using the gift of thought in a healthy way. So a healthy way is husnul dhan billah, having good thinking, a good opinion of Allah. And an unhealthy way is either the forgetfulness of Allah or misconception, like any other way, basically, any other way we're using the gift of thought that doesn't include having that good opinion of Allah.
I think this is something to reflect on by itself. That's because this is a big one, yet a very essential topic. So yeah, we
Mm.
will unpack more as we go along, inshallah.
Inshallah. We've just touched on a few examples here, but we will go into a deep dive moving forward where we unpack lots of different examples so we can see it. Because it's actually not so much about, or how do I fix it? It's actually seeing it, because most of the time it's quite invisible to us. It's a blind spot, and that's why we accidentally use the gift of thought in a way that is steering us away from Allah.
And what we're offering, tell me if this is what you would say, Scan. It's offering an understanding before we fix it. There's no need to fix this. We are offering an understanding so that naturally we start to see things with more clarity, and then we know what to do in that moment. There's a lot more clarity, a lot more ease there.
Yes, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Beautiful. I think that's a good place to pause.
Thank you for joining us for some spiritual CPR. If today's conversation gave you something to reflect on, share your questions, comments, and confusions below. We'll see you in the next episode of Slowing Down to the Speed of Tawakkul, inshallah.